DreamHack Open is brought to you by Intel, Corsair, MSI, and Monster Energy.
We began the day in the upper bracket, but now it is time to get cutthroat. We move into the lower bracket here at DreamHack Open 4 as Godsent take on Sprout to fight the tournament live. Of course, two people that are going nowhere anytime soon, my wonderful analyst, Maniac, and Potter. Potter, pleasure to have you up here in a Christmas sweater, no less. I love the festivities already.
I thought it was close enough. You know, we're in middle October. You know, you're starting to hear some more Christmas music here and there. So I thought, why not? Why not?
Are you that type of person that gets your Christmas tree out at like beginning of November?
I do, and I don't take it away until about June or July. So I'm definitely one of those.
I love that so much. Of course, we've got to check in with a bit of a recap of our bracket as well before we get into today's action. Of course, I was joined by Maniac earlier this morning where we saw Vitality taking on NIP. Of course, Vitality going to be advancing to the upper bracket playoff semi-final against none other than Big. That is going to be an absolutely huge matchup there, Maniac. I know we're looking forward to it as a rematch of the last RMR's grand final.
Yeah, quite honestly, both games in the upper bracket are absolutely stellar. This is going to be so incredible to watch. Full Force Astralis going up against Fnatic in bootcamp, but then you have Big on the up and up facing Vitality, who's showing consistency all across the board. These are two crazy games that I really want to see. And even in the lower bracket, now we're going to do Godsent versus Sprout, but then you also have OGG2, NIP FaZe. These people are fighting for their lives in that tournament.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be half of Vitality, obviously advancing on to face Big. But Christine, NIP losing, then going on to face FaZe. That's got to hurt.
That's gotta hurt. That's definitely gotta hurt, especially in the fashion that they just lost to Vitality, a little bit of a beatdown. So definitely both Vitality and FaZe, they've got something to prove. And surely FaZe, especially once again after they had such a successful run just a couple weeks ago, they're looking for redemption.
Yeah, they are indeed. And of course, our next matchup is going to be Godsent versus Sprout. As we were saying, this is our first match of the lower bracket. It means one team will be falling if they lose into that 9th to 12th category. Of course, they'll be vying out for that as this is an RMR event. The points are very important going forward for this one, but it means their tournament life will come to an end effectively. So of course, we've got to start off with our map vetoes first of all. Maniac, have you got any ideas of where this one's going to be leaning?
Listen, I'm not really an expert into this team's map pool. I think Overpass should not be played. That used to be Sprout's natural veto. I don't see why they would allow it. And that Godsent have a little bit of leeway. They could decide to remove Dust 2, which has been a very, very good map for Sprout. So again, I think Overpass and Dust 2 shouldn't be played. There you have it. Now the picks, there is some discussion to be had. Sprout, they have the possibility to go for Mirage if they want to, but they've also been playing Vertigo as well, which could be a trump card, could be a curveball. So I'm not exactly sure, Christine, if you have any insight, because you're usually pretty spot on with vetoes.
Well, here we are. I think Sprout are going to pick Vertigo and Godsent are going to pick Inferno. It was already out on the screen when I saw it. But Vertigo, it makes sense. You know, actually, I had in my notes that I thought Sprout was going to pick Nuke, but I'm glad to see that they have actually figured out some sort of win condition on this Vertigo. If you look at Sprout's past histories on their recent series, they've been actually picking back and forth between 4 different maps. And that kind of mentality, that logic tells me that Sprout, they're feeling kind of comfortable across all the maps, and they want to go for whatever their opponent's weakest map points are. So right now, this tells me that Sprout sees a huge weak point, a huge flaw in Godsent's Vertigo approach. So I like this.
Yeah, I like this a lot, and I think we can hone in a little bit more on this Vertigo pick and compare some of the statistics from both sides of the server. Of course, this was Sprout's map pick, not really too much of a surprise considering they played it a lot more, as you were saying, Christine. Godsent not too favored on this, and we can see that coming out in the statistics, Maniac. Only a 37% win rate for the Godsent.
Indeed, good numbers for Sprout. And if we're just talking win conditions, if I can lay the scene for the viewers at home, for Sprout on that CT side, there's going to be Diha playing over to the B-bomb side. He's going to be the anchor. Snatchy will be very proactive with the AWP, and we can talk about it later, but there seems to be a Snatchy dependency currently right now in Sprout. He defines whether they win or they lose games. He's going to be instrumental, and Dennis will be playing that middle area of the park. So these are the three players that you should keep an eye on.
Yeah, before we get into talking about Sprout too much, I think we should switch over to the other foot and start talking about Godsent rather. And of course, the lovely Frankie had a chance to catch up with Devilwalk ahead of this match. Let's see what he had to say.
Devilwalk, thank you so much for joining me. Sprout is not a team that I believe you guys have played before with your current lineup. So what are you expecting from that matchup?
I expect us to be favorites, at least in my head, and that's all that matters. And I expect us to play our game, be very relaxed. We were a bit stressed against Astralis, so we'll take a lesson from that and move in with a lot more confidence against Sprout.
And have you had much of a chance to watch Sprout and the way that they play?
On some maps I've seen them play, and I know a little bit about their at least low utility calls. So we'll see what they have in store. They have some crazy players that can go off, so we'll have to be careful of that.
Well, luckily, so do you. Thank you very much for talking to me, Devilwalk.
Thank you.
Stressed is definitely the light way to be putting it if you're Godsent going up against Astralis in their upper bracket matchup. Of course, Astralis were the favourites with that. It was a pretty swift 2-0 from their side. And I feel like, Posta, Astralis were really good at just dominating the players that we'd normally be pointing out for Godsent as being the true difference makers in a series.
Yeah, exactly. And that series had to have been such a frustrating one for these Godsent guys, because although it was swift and it was 2-0, the scoreline was monumental. But we did point out that Godsent, they found a lot of opening kills. They were actually able to put themselves in post-plant scenarios multiple times across both maps, and they just weren't able to kind of overcome that mid-game, that mid-round where Astralis were so good at just picking off one by one, and Godsent were never able to actually get to a set piece type of scenario. So definitely this time around for Godsent, those stress levels, they're down. Sprout, the opponent, as Devilwalk showed, that they're probably going to be the better team on paper. So definitely a lot more confidence coming into this series. I don't think we're going to see those high stress levels coming out of these Godsent guys as we did versus Astralis.
Yeah, and obviously the man on the left of your screen there, Farlik, the Dane in the server against Astralis. He was actually top fragging at half-time in that score, in that map rather, of Nuke. But Maniac, I think a lot of our eyes rather have got to be put onto Madden, because we talk about him as sort of being a star player, being a bit of a win condition. He was definitely in their series against FaZe. Was he another player you're going to be looking at to be stepping back up to the plate here?
Yeah, for sure. Madden seems to be a player whose level is influenced by the type of opposition he's going up against, right? It's quite clear that Astralis somehow completely muted him on the server. We were expecting a lot coming from the young player. He did not deliver the way we hoped, but now, against Sprout, that's a different kind of opponent. And I'm actually going to take the backflip of that stress discussion here. I do believe Godsent have way more to prove today than they had versus Astralis. These two teams, they are together in kind of the same bubble right now. They belong to the teams that are trying to make it to the top level of Counter-Strike. They're almost there in the rankings, very close to each other. So if you're Godsent, you're going up against a direct rival right here. Sprout, if they beat Godsent today, we will all forget about the good performances, the good T sides. Yeah, the beat phase. You lose to Sprout, that is it. Everyone gets your storyline, puts it to the trash. So they have something to prove. It's not going to be that easy.
Just quickly, I do want to bounce off that though, Potter, for something that we heard in the post-game interview with Zen. I believe it was after their FaZe game, their FaZe series rather, because he, we were seeing him on the webcams. He was such a hype man for the team. So I feel like, if there's that lack of stress coming into the team, he might be a true difference maker just in terms of the mentality of the team.
Absolutely. And you see it in the playstyle of these Godsent members. When they were faced up against Astralis, it was very standard. They didn't want to take too many risks. They didn't want to go poking around and potentially just have the team kind of collapse, right? So definitely in this series, I think you're right, Freya. Zen, especially Madden, these two players are going to have a little more oomph coming through. They're going to want to go out and seek out those duels. They're going to want to go out and make a statement and prove exactly how damn good they are in that server. So I think this time around, we're going to see a lot of action across the board. No one's going to be shying away from these types of duels. So it's going to be, it's going to get spicy, I think.
Well, it seems to be the battle of the coaches in Frankie's chat room today as we caught up with Sprouts coach NK ahead of this one.
NK, the coach from Sprout, joins me now to chat about his success with the team over the past few months. Because NK, you're obviously doing a cracking job because Sprout are gaining more and more attention on the international scene. So what exactly are you doing with the team?
I don't know actually what I'm doing, but the team is performing quite well in the last months. Ever since the summer break, we've been performing really well. We've done a boot camp to work really, really hard on our weaknesses on our map pool, especially Vertigo, improving that quite a lot.
Is there anything you can do to help the team hit those all-important shots in the playoffs?
I wish there was something that I could do personally, but I mean, I can just only talk to them, remind them of what they're capable of, and then hopefully we get a lot of practice days coming up, because right now practice days are quite rare in all honesty. There's a lot of official matches, so not too much good quality practice. So let's hope that we can get some really good quality practice in before important matches, and that would help with our consistency as well, I assume.
Echoing your thoughts there, Potter, about them focusing on Vertigo. And of course, we're going to be seeing that as the first map picked out in this series. And interestingly, you know, we were talking about Sprout when they faced up against North, and you were saying two names really stand out on this roster. That is Diha and Snatchy, two big fragging, big names on this squad.
Yeah, definitely the two players that I'm keeping an eye out on. Now, Diha, he was a bit neutered in that series, you know, he wasn't quite as spicy, I have to say. I hate using that word, but he didn't have that oomph in the server. Now, Dust 2, he absolutely performed, and that's a map that we usually see these kind of pug stars performing on, but it's not going to be in this series. It's going to be that Vertigo. So definitely, I think Diha is going to need to find a different sort of a method. And I'm also looking at Favin, you know, statistically, Favin has been up there with these two players as well. And in this tournament, he's been a bit absent. So definitely, Sprout, they're going to need Favin to step up as well.
Yeah, Maniac, you were sort of talking about it beforehand, but there's, you know, quite a nice contrast we can talk about in terms of these two teams' play styles, isn't there?
Yes, to put it simply, I believe Godsent are looking to play a more polished, execute-heavy type of Counter-Strike. We know they have the eye for the details. They've showed that to us on their T side, whereas Sprout, they are looking to make it messy. They want to make it brawly. They want to have duels. They want to have their individuals make the difference and then play the power play. So sure, we can talk about Diha, we talk about Favin, Snatchy, all these players. They need to create opportunities. They need to create the chaos, push Godsent out of their comfort zone, because we know that the T side of Godsent, if left untouched, is going to be dangerous.
It is indeed. And of course, we've got to get our predictions locked in for this game. Potter, I'm starting with you. Who are you siding with?
Oh man, I still haven't decided. I'm gonna go with Sprout here. I think Sprout are gonna win this out. Vertigo is iffy. You know, they didn't have the best performance on it, but I still have high hopes for these Polish duo on this squad. So I'm going with Sprout.
What about you, Maniac?
You know, I was hoping to shock everyone with my Sprout pick, but, you know, Christine is agreeing with me. I think in French we say les grands esprits se rencontrent, which basically means we're both awesome.
Oh.
So, yeah, I'm going to go with Sprout. I think Godsent might be, as I said, pushed out of their comfort zone. It's going to be a brawly game, not the one that they want to play specifically. So I'm going to say Sprout.
Well, you know what? I'm not going to be awesome for you, Mathieu. I'm going to go with Godsent. You know what? I love a split desk. I love a bit of rivalry coming into this one. I heard Devil Walk. I'm on board with what he said. But I also want to check in with our Twitch chat and see exactly what they are thinking for the series. We saw it 50-50 to open up the day. 52% siding with me, Maniac. I mean,
that's it. Yeah. That's all I need to see. 52, clearly you're the superior human being. I mean, 52 for you, 48 for us. That's all I need. Quick math.
4% in it. Thank you so much, Twitch chat, for agreeing with us. But of course, I think all there is left to do is to be kicking off this second best of 3 series of the day. This one will determine who lives to fight another day here at DreamHack Open 4. Can the gods rain from above, or will Sprout drown their dreams? Find out after this.
elimination beckons and looms for one of these two teams. Godsent, alongside their opponents of Sprout, will be doing Mortal Kombat here, Tom, and we'll be getting right into the action very shortly. Vertigo up first. I had a chance to actually commentate Godsent a little bit on Vertigo after the last couple of weeks in the Flashpoint qualifiers, and I've got to be honest with you here, Tom, it didn't look too good. Their T and CT sides both let them down in varying parts. Their T side in particular, they only picked up 3 rounds in one of their games, and honestly, it was some of the worst T performance that I've seen in quite a while. So I come through into this Vertigo with a lot of questions to be answered, and I am not sold yet on this pick.
Nice positive start coming out from you,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, basically, I've seen them play. I don't think it's going to go well. I think that's sort of the weird thing with both of these teams is sort of what Potter was saying. I want to echo it in a sense of like, we've seen Sprout picking a lot of different maps. I don't really feel like either of them has what I would call a home map. Like if you look at someone, say for example, we've done a lot of Fnatic so far. When I see them pick Inferno, I think Fnatic will win Inferno. And I don't really question it. I just go, that's a really good map for them. Doesn't matter who they'll play, they'll do well. Both of these teams sort of have a very stretched map pool where they're happy to play a lot of things, but I don't think they're particularly amazing at them. Now, I do agree going into this first map, I think that there's got to be a slight sway in favor of Sprout because it's one that they've been okay at. The problem is the statistics, at least, of what we have are very misleading. Like Sprout have been grinding their way, for example, through the likes of MDL and playing tournaments where they're up against teams that are not necessarily on the level of what they've been playing against recently, for example, in Cologne or as we have at DreamHack Falls. So I've got a lot of questions when it comes to this Sprout roster. And, well, let's be real. Of the teams they've beaten so far, they beat to NIP, or they beat NIP, they lost to NIP, and then they lost to North. So they haven't really beaten any of the top teams so far in this tournament.
Sure. I mean, that's a very good point. And as Maniac said on the desk, you know, as well as Godsent have been doing lately, if they were to succumb to Sprout and make it a pretty one-sided affair at that, then all of their momentum somewhat gets thrown in the bin. So there's a lot on the line here. We heard Devil Walk talking about, you know, there's pressure on us against Astralis and we were a bit nervous and a bit anxious. So you'd hope from their perspective, they come through into this game a little bit more calm and collected, much more evenly spread game. Even on the desk, it was split. The Twitch chat thought it was split. And now Stico trying to split some heads. He's already done a lot of damage to Spiddy as Sprout look to move their way up on the ramp, and he does connect onto Snatchy. One of the main hitters on Sprout is gone. The 2 Polish players, the ones to look out for. DreamHack still alive for a little bit longer, but Stico taking more down alongside him. The bomb also dropping on side. And that puts Sprout into a very awkward position. Rotations coming through from DreamHack, but Farlig will have none of it. Just splatters him instantly. A 2v4 falls upon us, Tom, and Spiddy only on 39 HP.
Yeah, and Godsent are constantly hunting for information. They've already gone back to the B site, cleared it out, and now rotated back once again. I think they were caught off by the initial aggression of Godsent, maybe expecting a bit more of a cagey affair, and Godsent have said, nah, we're just going to go fight you at Dennis, where you could see not happy with the way that pistol round has gone. And I agree in a sense. I think obviously the pressure of playing Astralis is that realistically, you're probably not going to beat Astralis. They have the stars in almost every single role. The counter argument to that, though, is I don't expect Godsent to beat Astralis. Like, if they lose, that's just what we expect on the day. If they manage to upset them, sure, that's fantastic. But realistically, I don't think even Devil Walker, who has a lot of faith in his team, would have gone into that series going, oh, we're going to beat Astralis. Like, you'd have to be a little bit mental. So this match, there's a different sort of pressure. Like, I do expect Godsent to win this one. Like, Sprout are on the rise for sure. We've seen a lot from their players recently. But Godsent are a team that, while going into this event, were one of the top teams in terms of RMR points. I think they were 3rd. So they have the pressure of, okay, we're expected to perform already. We already have. Now this round, then we're not expecting much at all. Oh, that's a bit dicey. But they keep it relatively clean. Sure, some extra damage done, but ultimately they kept the players alive, and that's all that really matters.
And it's an interesting point that you raised as well, Tom. You know, there's not much pressure against Astralis. No one really expects you to win. Whereas coming through into this game, I think you're touching on this. They absolutely do have a much better chance. And maybe that's where you become your own worst enemy. You start to have doubts in the back of your mind. To go back to the Vertigo performances I was talking about, they lost to Saw twice in a row. And then they lost to Windstrike. And it was that Windstrike game, a team that many people would expect them to walk straight through. As I'm speaking, the 1-for-1 trade does kick off. But it was that Windstrike performance where they only got 3 T rounds after the first half went 8-7 to lose it 16-10. And that is what I'm worried about. However, Tom, surely they've gone back to the drawing board. They've seen the issues and they'll try and make the most of it. Zen's being tagged and he gets finished off by DreamHack. Starts it off through the pillar and finishes. They will look for a boost over towards the Jennies, and there's the one, but does get traded back again. Sprout looking good in their first proper rifle round. Stico 1-on-3, already posted up 4 frags and 180 ADR to his name early doors, but there will be no extra coming his way. Only bullets, 2-1.
Yeah, good start from Sprout. Obviously, after losing the initial rounds, you want to break back as soon as possible, not allow the momentum to build. And well, we've already seen a pretty decent start. I like that from Dia, just spamming through the middle. You do have to be careful that you don't have to like correct your aim in the few seconds where the player does peak, but he had support ready and waiting. And while already with the amount of damage that's done, the early buy coming in for Sprout, it's not a pretty situation for Godsent. Now, Madden was someone highlighted on the desk. I think he's definitely going to have a good game. I think he's the main player I look to in terms of the more aggressive side of Godsent, because you've got a lot of level heads, a lot of experience when it comes to this international roster. He's the one that I think can have those almost JWS games where he gets rolling and then he's terrifying. The problem is there's the other side of the coin as well, where if Sprout do well enough to shut him down, sometimes he is completely missing. And that's always a problem when he's a little bit inconsistent.
100% agree with you. I do have a stat to raise, but it seems like we're going to have a bit of action first and foremost. Favid going in aggro, a fully ecoing team, just with some deagles tossed in for good measure on the side of Godsent. They have at least made 1 kill stick. But this is where the superior firepower really coming to the forefront. Just to add an extra element to what you said, Tom, and absolutely back it up. Again, when they played against Saw, Madden was bottom fragging with 8 kills. It was Crystal top of the scoreboard with 22. So they shut him down and he never really got rolling, and that was the end result. You can't expect Crystal to be top fragging for Godsent. He is not that player. He does not need to be that player. They have plenty of other stars that you expect to step up to the table, so they'll have to change that around against Sprout.
Well, the buy they've come up with in this round is not the best. A couple of SMGs. The AWP, interestingly, onto Madden. Really trying to pick up that star mantle. Obviously, we know that Farlig came in as a replacement for Makalele. I think a move that was 100% needed. And he's still been doing well, but I do think when we saw him in the previous rosters before, definitely seemed to have more of that star potential. Obviously, it can happen when you move up, but sometimes can have a few quieter games. You're playing against much tougher opposition. I'm hoping for their sake he can do well. Great start, though, again from Sprout. And I'll be honest, so far they haven't had to do anything too complicated. Just working off the picks. Faven having a great start to the game as well. He's up to his 5th kill already. And, well, the AWP not looking like it's going to have any impact at all. Probably should just be a save, but, wow, we're seeing that slightly crazier side of Madden. I don't see the benefit of going for this in a 2v5.
Yeah, he absolutely living up to his name, isn't he? Like his 2v5, you got $50 on both him and Farlig. Yeah, no real hope. I don't even understand this positioning. And DreamHack, he seems to have realized exactly what's coming up. He's rotated all the way around the back, so he's cleared out most of these angles, and it stands to good reason the remaining 2 CTs are around the site. And it just goes back to what we said before, like, unless they just assume that DreamHack would have them dead to rights anyway, but at least try and save. Like, what are you going to do stood next to the bomb when it detonates? Like, you're still going to die, right?
Yeah, that's a weird one, because he had to rotate in as well. It's not even like he was already there. Like, he ran from the B site to his death. Yeah, I can't really justify that one. As you said, like maybe they were worried about a flank already coming in, but you can set up a crossfire. You could try and save that AWP working as a unit rather than, I guess, holding for exits. I'm trying to think of a logical reason to do it, but I don't really have one.
Especially this early on as well. Like if you're trying to land some kind of audacious ninja defuse without a kit, first and foremost, best of luck to you. But secondly, it's so early in the game. Surely you want to be trying to solidify your economy as early on as possible, because now they go into another anti-eco round. Sprout cruised through it last time, breezed and never really had an issue, and it's more of the same. So Godsent get their 2 rounds off the back of the pistol, and as soon as rifle rounds come into play, Sprout have been head and shoulders above them. Zen at least putting a bit more damage down and maybe picking up the AK to save it. That would be a nice bonus. But they still will be trailing 2-4, and the alarm bell's beginning to ring.
Well, yeah, especially with what you mentioned previously of their T side being questionable against a weaker opponent. We saw a little bit, well, from Saw. It's one of those names that's just going to infuriate me. It's like whenever you cast big and you're like, oh, that was a big rat. Oh, for God's sake. But yeah, with Saw, we definitely have seen some different things from them in this tournament that look decent. Like, I think they were better than maybe we expected. But even still, Godsent are looking to be a consistent top 20, maybe higher team. So not really acceptable to be losing in that regard. And now, Sprout, decent start. This is their map choice, of course. The one that I think if this series is going to be a closer one, they're expected to win. The tease. This is so aggressive. I like this from Dennis. He's someone that you definitely have to keep an eye on, especially on the T sides. Even on Inferno, I've enjoyed watching him in the past around the apartments. He's just shredding them at the moment. Even goes in for a 3rd kill and gives some extra space to Faven. And I mentioned it already. I don't think they're reinventing the wheel. They are just out-dueling Godsent.
100%. I mean, as you say, it's a great entry from Dennis. Just ruthless aggression, catching Crystal with a nade out and then flashbangs him. But then you see Sprout disjoint, sorry, not Sprout, pardon me. They disjoint Godsent, I guess you could say. Godsent coming through 1-1-1, just constantly, just spreading into the site, but never really setting up for crossfires, never really setting up for ability to get counterfrags, to avenge their teammates. And so they just walk in, conga line their way into death. This is nothing like crazy in terms of intricate strats. It's just Sprout showing up with their dueling and their aim on point. And I like the timeout from Godsent. Call it early, try and figure out how you can best come back into this, because you run the very real risk of letting this spiral out of control if you continue in this way.
Well, yeah, these are the moments where Devil Walk will earn his paycheck. Like, the man is, well, to put it lightly, he's a vocal coach, a very vocal coach. Like, if you're out of line, he's going to be the person telling you, okay, well, let's not be silly here. You get back into position, you do your job. And I think they need some words of encouragement early on in this match, because, as said, like, Sprout, they're having a very easy time of finding opening picks. And sure, that's going to happen quite regularly, especially if you're battling for the ramp. But thus far, we haven't really seen Godsent battle for it. Sure, in some of the early pistol rounds, they went for some fights. But that round, Dennis just waltzed up there. They're having a bit of a ball and made it look very, very easy. This round, though, I like this. A change of pace from Sprout. They're being patient. Faven, a bit of a whiff initially, and because of that, Farlick is able to get the trade. They do have Kevlar in this round, and okay, then. The B-site stairs hold from Zen and Sticko is going very well. Zen will re-peek and at least give one back to Snatchy. And you don't want to give this man too much in terms of opportunities. Has chucked this AWP away, but I assume there's a rifle on the stairs, and there is. Now they move into this clutch situation.
Still certainly a winnable round on Sprout. They've got mollies to toss into these key choke points. If that spreads, Stico's going to have a couple of issues. It doesn't, though. It's the wrong side of the pillar, and that could put Snatchy into a false sense of security, but they've seen Stico's arm round the side of the pillar. He does at least chunk in for the 1-dig on Spiddy, and Snatchy unsure as to where his final adversary currently resides. It is Farlick with the aforementioned AK that he took down earlier. 20 seconds. Snatchy needs to just cover all of these angles. He's wasted enough time that he's not sure about where Farlig comes from, but Farlig holds on with the AK, using it against the T's. And the first time in a while that we can get really excited for Godsent. They actually make the tactical timeout work.
Farlig looked like he was sweating a little bit there, clearly feeling the pressure. It is worth mentioning once again, for anybody who isn't aware, this is an elimination match. So one of these teams are out of the tournament, and I think especially for Sprout, it is fair in saying that so far they've had a relatively easy road. Like they're in the group that we sort of looked down and went, yeah, it's probably a little bit imbalanced in comparison to the likes of Group A and Group B, which have, say, 6 or 7 of the best teams in the world. There were definitely some questions being asked of Group D, but obviously it's done by RMR points, so teams making changes, positioning, mattering in this sort of spot. But this is one of the first times we're actually going to see Sprout tested. And going forward, well, I think they're on the side of the bracket that has both Astralis and Fnatic currently. If they fall down, one of them has to fall down. And the other is Heroic, who are probably going to take the map over North later. So either way, it's not going to be an easy match coming up next. It does give them at least some space to move further forward in this lower bracket. They have no extra lives, as we spoke about earlier. In this round at least, the life is looking low from these Godsent players. So many tags already hit, and for Sprout, again, in a very commanding position.
Yeah, that 1-up has depleted, but their health bar is not looking too much better. Crystal's aim was not on point. His crosshair a little bit wild in that approach, and Favin drawing out some players to stick on there from the CTs. Meanwhile, they're also aggressive on the B side. It's a real split and mix approach on Sprout, and they're getting punished. Zico and Farlig have laid them both to rest. Spitty needs to come through with a kill onto Stico, but it's actually Snatchy that quickly peeks him and dispatches post-haste. And with 10 seconds, or just under, Sprout do get the bomb down. Considering that Godsent did lose 4 players in that previous round after going in with pistols, it's not as if their economy is going to be ideal after this. They depleted some of that round loss bonus. A couple players could buy, and so maybe Farlig just holds on to this AK, and they muster something together for the next one. But Sprout into phenomenal ways again, showing that that previous round was just a blip on the radar.
Yeah, I'm always worried for teams, Vince, when we see them win with pistols and then instantly get returned on. Like, it's like you've given yourself that lifeline and then you have everything you need and you're unable to hold things down. And I think the thing I've been impressed so far, oh dear, with Sprout is that all in all, I expected this to have to be like a Deher, Snatchy, maybe even Faven, like hard carry. And then it would be Dennis and Spiddy sort of like bringing the experience to the team. That's not really been the case, at least so far in this tournament. And from watching them, as said, in like the likes of MDL and other build-up tournaments, is that Dennis and Spiddy, a lot of the time, are actually carrying their weight. They're one of the rosters that seems to have 5 players performing the majority of the time. And you look across the pond to the other side of Godsent, and that's where we do actually call questions. A lot of the time you have players just completely fall off the face of the earth. I think mainly we look at Madden when we talk about that. This, though, much more aggressive. I spoke about ramp control. I talked about that fight. This round, of course, their buy was weaker. But they have taken a risk. It's not quite paying off, though.
Yeah, a bit of a desperation peak, it seemed from me, from Crystal there. I mean, it's a 3v3. There's still 1 minute and 20 left on the clock. You don't need to be going in for that aggro. Unless he wanted the information to draw out a retreating player from B side back onto A to bolster it up. Regardless, it didn't work out. And it's put more pressure on his teammates of Stico, who's already down to 10 HP, and Zen, who is one of their main performers. He will be going in slowly, and Favin mixing up the pace again. Sprout seems so good and so disciplined in these kind of scenarios where they just sit in, they realize they've got the advantage. They don't need to rush into a potential crossfire. Play it slow, play it steady, and pick up the straggling players. Stico's 10 HP, unlikely to yield a great deal out of this, and D-Hat lays him down. Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but have Godsent actually won a rifle round this game? I feel like they haven't.
No, I think you're right. Like it was the sort of early stage rounds that we witnessed from them, and then yeah, they won the first 2 rounds. The round we just witnessed where they won with pistols, and then an instant response from Sprout. I'll be honest, like, even though you said you'd like seen them play it recently, you even mentioned there was their T side that was underwhelming. Thus far, everything's been underwhelming. Like, even on just an individual level, their aggression hasn't really been paying off. When they've tried to be passive, it hasn't worked either. I think so far Sprout have literally had like all map control, which I don't think I've ever seen that. Like, we've now seen multiple rounds where Sprout have gone, okay, we're going to push A, but also we're going to push B, and we're going to have a lurker in middle, and they've not been punched.
What? Zen just died. Did he fall off the skyscraper? What happened there, Zen?
Hope we have a replay of whatever he did.
I mean, that reaction says it all. I can't believe I've done this. Let's have a look. So he backs away. Oh, no, Zen. No! What have you done? Oh, my God. I just saw it at the top right. I was like, hold on a second. What's happened there, then?
Good. Oh, no. Well, our replay guy's just made another enemy. He's on Zen's hit list. He was hoping that one might slide under the radar, but no, we got you, Zen. As if it wasn't going bad enough already. But at least, you know what, we'll move on. They have managed to get the opener. And Zen, maybe it was like a sacrifice. Like he needed to summon a better version of himself, so he's sacrificed himself to the gods of Vertigo. Madden, again, AWPing, and it's a complete whiff. He is having a rough start to this game. Sticko tries to rectify things, but again, it's like a solo play trying to bring things back. Crystal can't connect his shots either, and Farlig sat on the B site wondering where his team have gone.
This just seems like a team that doesn't have confidence, Tom. Like, you're seeing mistakes coming in. Fair enough, it's going to happen. They're just human, but the amount of whiffs, the amount of opportunities that Godsent have had to stop some of these pushes, and they have always been second best to the punch. Like, always slower on the trigger. 9-3, no rifle rounds, still picked up on Godsent, and they're back into another half buy. This could be an absolute disaster of a half if it continues this way.
Yeah, I want to see them start setting up the players that are performing. Like, okay, ramp sucked. Let's be real. I'm not going to beat around the bush. Their control of ramp has been awful. You have an AWPer who is of star potential. Someone like Farlig. He's been playing B the majority of the rounds. Let's change that. Let's move that away. Let's try and get him in a position where he can actually get openers for your squad, and then you can work off them. Because as of right now, we're seeing Madden try and take that. Okay, that's ridiculous. If you're Statue, you've got to be pissed. But okay. Maybe they'll win this round, but I would love to see them actually utilize this Danish star. Like, he definitely has the potential to take over rounds. Stick him up on the ramp, get him Crystal there to support him. I know that Crystal spends a ridiculous amount of time learning different flash grenades. I remember on Nuke, he's worked out how to silently drop out of heaven by just hitting the right angle. Like, he should be able to perfectly support Farlig in these sort of situations. So have them two try and take over the ramp. He's not really been missing his shots. It's most of the time he's just ended up on retakes on A. And maybe you can shut down Dennis, who, as we sort of mentioned, like, if you look at this roster, he is not the out-and-out star. But on these T sides, he is so deadly at getting openers. You shut him down a couple of times, though, maybe it's a change.
Sticko nearly shut him down, landed the scout shot, but just down to 29. Was a chest shot as opposed to the head. It's a nice attempt, but nice attempts won't really be good enough. Godsent need rounds, and they need them now. Madden pushing through, can't deny the bomb plant, but denying 2 lives. He goes in for Spitty and Dennis, and that's what we're talking about. Maybe those plays are the catalyst for a comeback. Farlig picking up the AK, but getting caught in transition. Unfortunate timing. It was such a nice try from Madden in particular, but it just falls short.
10 rounds on the T side. This is one of the maps where I feel like it is relatively 50-50 at this point. So I'm like, obviously you can see these sort of halves, but the fashion that they've been coming in, like, there have been no like gun round wins still, for Godsent. And it feels like they're just having to take riskier and riskier plays. Crystal now pushing all the way down. Nachi's not going to miss that shot. They practically walked into the angle. They've got another different double AWP setup as well. It's now Sticko with one. It seems like they're just trying anything they can to win these rounds.
Sure, it really does seem to have that air of desperation about it. And take nothing away from Sprout, they've played exceptionally well. You know, they've been mixing up the pace. They've had a lot of great reads. Their aim has absolutely been on point. And normally you look at DreamHack to be one of those players that really sets things alight. And as you said, it's been more the likes of Dennis. You know, not that DreamHack's been having a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. He's just not really been required as much. Spiddy's been getting tons of entries. And as I say that, Dennis goes out looking for more. A weakened Madden and treads D very, very carefully because that molly is about to spread up the box if he's not careful. And indeed it does. Dennis goes in for more. He gets traded out, but Spiddy's just behind him to avenge his fallen German. And now Sticko and Zen, they don't have any nades between the two of them. Let's be honest, Tom, they're out of time. In terms of saving, they have to go for this. And with the death of Sticko, I don't think Zen has any other options. He kind of has to just hold it to his M4. They don't really have much to supply it, though, in the next round. We are going to hit 11-3, and that statistic that we said, 0 rifle rounds won on Godsent, continues.
The thing that's very curious to me, I still remember in some of the earlier stages of this team, they were pretty good at Dust 2. I remember them having some like reasonable results on it. They did have a streak of losses versus the top teams, but like they had some close matches versus Vitality. They managed to beat like North. They beat Spirit, Ents. Like this was towards the beginning of the year, and then they even beat Fnatic as well in July. And now that's become their veto. And I'll be honest, I don't really understand why. I always really enjoyed watching the T sides of Godsent on Dust 2. I think they were fairly methodical. And I look at this and I think, is their current state of Dust 2 worse than this? And I don't think it will be. Like, granted, maybe they're just having a bad day at the office. I can't say I've seen a massive amount of Godsent on this map, but it just looks really disjointed and super reliant on individual plays, which let's be real, that's not what this Godsent roster is renowned for. They're well known for being very strategical, methodical, clearing angles, good utility usage, and very well structured. And this has been anything but. Maybe though, just maybe they could finally pick up a buy round. It's not their best buy, that's for sure, but it is an investment nonetheless. It's the last round of the half, so they didn't really have a choice. And Zen has managed to pick up his second kill of the round. He's had a few openers here and there. Now the bomb has been left behind. Vince and the remaining two players are tagged low. At the same time, with a 0% success rate, I'm not counting Sprout out just yet.
Oh, certainly not. Faven, 15 kills, and Snatchy won't be too far off. The German going in first, while his teammate retrieves the bomb, is making moves up ramp. The two CTs completely isolated from one another, one on each site. And with this smoke coming down, the call will come through for Zen to get a move on. He needs to come over and help out Farlig. Back out into the open. He has been, I would say, Godsent's glimmer of hope in this game. Oh, the defense isn't there, and Farlig actually gets both of them. So coming through into the second half, they do finally win a rifle, but it still will be 11 to Sprout for Godsent. A CT half that Godsent will want to forget very quickly. They at least started and ended in winning ways, but Tom, I've got to be honest, I don't have much hope for them on the TC side from what I saw before, man. Like, it just seemed very disjointed. The same issues they had on their CT side of things. But maybe they've worked on it. Maybe they can prove me wrong and come out the gates here with a pistol. They will be stacking all 5 players on ramp, but early grenade damage to Farlig will make him think twice of going in first. They still, though, push in towards the scaffolding. Good flashbang tossed in, and tons of CTs there to guide their bullets to head. Spitty gets 2. They do at least get traded out, and maybe there's a way forward for Godsent yet.
Oh, they've had to use their smoke just to try and free Dennis from the corner, although he's actually stuck around. I don't know if they will still expect him to be here. After already spotting 2 players on this side of the map, though, we are going to see the rotation back, and this is one of the best situations we've seen for Godsent so far. Definitely the healthier of the 2. They still have some utility onto Sticko as well, so make this take onto the B site a little bit easier, but they do have D-Hurt still to deal with. And as you mentioned, he's not having a bad game. He just hasn't had that much to do. Dennis's entries have been so effective that realistically he hasn't had to be the powerhouse that we see from Poland. This time, though, he's ready and waiting. First kill comes all too easy. No trade available just yet as he still looks to hold the line. Second is as clinical as the first, but both players are low. There's a real chance for Madden. Dennis is actually lurking within the smoke, just waiting for this bomb to be planted. It is going to be retrieved eventually. The first kill eventually goes the way of Madden. Now Spitty, he's waiting. Maybe expecting a fake plant, but the bomb will go down. Madden has made this an advantageous situation. Spitty, there's a kit available, but the most important thing is that he lands the headshot, finds the kill, and dancing around the edge of the boxes, Madden makes it nigh on impossible for him to be hit. He's even starting to question if he's gone all the way back around, and the time might just play a part, but Madden wins the clutch. It's a 4K for him, a booster to not only their chance of winning, but also hopefully to his confidence.
I think that's precisely the reason why Spitty was perched up on the ramp for that long. My concern is, on that post plant, like, even if he gets it, you have so much time to play the 1v2. I suppose they're maybe a little bit worried because they're both tagged down to about 10 HP where the Glock is really going to shine. But a bit disjointed this time from Sprout. Great news on Godsent. They take the second pistol. That should be them converting into 11-6, 11-7 kind of scoreline. But we saw them have a couple of slips and slides in that first half, and we need to see them prove to us that they have that consistency back intact. Maybe they've warmed themselves up. Maybe the motivational speech in amongst the half-time will get them ahead. Farlig taking damage and finished off, and Snatchy goes in for a scout shot instantly afterwards. They are culling the T's, but now they're on the receiving end of a Crystal SMG. Dennis against 2. He has a 5-7 and an incendiary, so he can stall that plant for a little bit longer once it comes down, but there's still so much time left, Tom, that Godsent, they don't have to fully commit behind this A play.
This is back-to-back rounds where Sprout have 4-man stacked. What a shot from Dennis. And now it's into the 1v1. Sticko, he gets it over the line. I guess that's what matters to them. It is a full investment coming out from the CT side. Definitely not the money farming exercise they would have been hoping for, but the most important thing at this point is that they take home the rounds. That shot from Dia is just utterly ridiculous, and well, they do make things incredibly costly. I like that they are being almost spontaneous with the way that they play these rounds. They're taking risks. They're putting stacks in different places. They're not afraid in rounds where they basically don't have a whole lot to lose to just try and throw everything into the wind. It's already very different to what we saw from Godsent, who, it was more just like, okay, I'm going to flash for this one player to try and take a peek.
Yeah, and it's something you touched about in that first half, that Godsent in many aspects are more regarded as being a strat-heavier team. They don't really rely on their individual skill as much. So it will be certainly interesting to see how they come. And obviously this is an anti-eco, so we're expecting a lot of bloodshed on the side of Sprout. They had the options to maybe force, knowing that Godsent's economy was bad, but when you have this kind of a lead, why risk it? Why go in for that gamble? They decide not to. So Godsent do indeed get up to 7, but when you consider that 5 of their 7 rounds are off the pistol rounds, it doesn't look quite as good as it otherwise could. However, if they break down Sprout's economy here and get this rifle, make no mistake, they are right back in this matchup. Like, they'll be breathing down Sprout's neck, so Sprout got to be careful.
I'm hoping they can also get Zen back into the match as well. Ooh, that is a nice little run boost. Launched quite far, and Snatchy definitely not afraid to battle for this ramp control. Something that's what I wanted to see from Farlig. Maybe not quite to the aggression that we saw there. See her flashed in initially, but does lose his life. Dennis with the re-aggression, still trying to hold this B site, but the rotation a little bit further away. Eventually, Spiddy's going to get into control. Dennis finds a kill and gets away with it. He takes no damage in response and even has the chance to peek him for a little bit more. They've held the line, and the T's, in fact, or at least the majority of them, have left.
Forced them away. Still Madden posted up just behind the smoke. That will start to fade and clear. In an off angle they probably didn't expect to start off with, but he needed to snatch in for a kill quickly. And with that whiff spray, his teammates will follow. Sprout had a couple of issues to contend with, losing the second pistol, but as soon as rifles came into play, they are dominant again.
I'm surprised. I do think Zen, like, at least from what I've heard in the past, is one of those players that when he's out of a match, he's out of a match. Like, I think he finds it very difficult to get back into things. There's definitely an element of tilt, although it's still hard to tell without being actually within the comms of the team. Kind of have to hope for their sake that he does come back into this match, because you have some of the pieces actually working out quite well. Sure, Crystal's not performing, but that's not really the reason he's in this team. Timing's going to be everything here, though. Madden has said he is a madman. It's in the name. He's going to take risks and favor, and the timing is perfect. Peeks back around, and the aggressor for Godsent is already gone. They have done a pretty good job of shutting him down. Like, there's not been many multi-frags, but there you go. Crystal boosted up. We'll get rid of Spiddy. A little bit of revenge. I wonder if he still has the Traitor's AK. I still remember that. He had, like, I think Spiddy and Dennis's name is actually on the AK, but we'll have to have a look a little bit later on, because Dia is just styling on them. The pole eventually burns, but it leaves Sticko 1v2, and he needs to get the bomb.
That smoke is an awkward one for Sticko, but does allow him a bit of safe passage to retrieve the bomb. Dennis tossing it down, now relocating up onto the ramp. But he's also waiting for his teammate. Snatchy's making moves, flanking around the back. So they know that Sticko's either still on the side or he's moved through on CT. And there we have it. Great positioning from Dennis, playing patiently again. And Sticko unable to really make anything work from this. 13-7. And Sprout just continuing to twist the knife in the side of Godsent, and it doesn't seem like they have too much to answer back. When you look at the kill dispersal as well, and Sprout, by the way, everybody 14 plus kills. There's only 5 kills between Dennis on 19 and Snatchy and Spiddy on 14. Have a look over to Godsent. There's 2 players that really do stick out for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I'd sort of mentioned it earlier that's one of the surprising things I think we've seen from Sprout is that it's actually like everybody's been performing well, and I didn't expect that going into the tournament. Dennis, a little bit of stat padding, doesn't manage to get the third. There is a trade available, but for Farlig it's a shallow victory, and well, they're losing players elsewhere. Farlig left with the Glock and the bomb. If he gets anything here, I'll be impressed, but they've already spotted him out, and eventually Diha, again, just boosting those stats a little bit further. 14-7. This, it sounds harsh, but I think even this scoreline is a little bit inflated for Godsent.
Sure,
they're not in this map at all.
I don't think it's harsh at all, Tom, because 5 of their 7 rounds have come off pistols. So if they lose those pistols, I mean, you are literally looking at a potential 14-2 scoreline here. I don't even think that's too unreasonable. I think that's fair.
When the other one was also the last round of the half, which if a team's winning dominantly and they lose the last round of the half, I'm not surprised by any stretch. That's so aggressive from Crystal. He just goes running through the smoke. Snatchy's still fighting. How is he not dead? Kill, he stood in the open. like, sure, he has a good support system, but this is ridiculous. I don't think I've seen a map this dominant in a while. I guess this is the counter for what we had earlier in the tournament, Vince. Like, we were blessed with some close back and forth games, never really looked out of it, and then they've gone, well, Sprout have decided to absolutely batter Godsent. Like, how can you play this position and get 2 kills?
Really exquisite AWP aim as well on Snatchy, but yeah, there has to be balance in all things, Tom. They can't all be bangers. They can't all be super close. I mean, Sprout have played excellent Counter-Strike. It's been a real joy to watch their Vertigo performance here. Obviously, we move across to Inferno. This is their choice. Needs to be mentioned. It's not like Godsent picked Vertigo and have been absolutely smashed and plowed on it. But elimination beckoning, and it's looking that Godsent will be trailing by a map, barring a pretty ridiculous comeback. Crystal has already been smacked down to 6, but Favin's not too much better off. Snatchy forced out of position with a flashbang, and Dennis smoked out. So mid-control being established from Godsent, trying to mix it up. Let's see if it works for them.
I always like to see a team trying to utilize mid-control. I think on a map like Vertigo, it's underrated, or underused might be a better word. Maybe this is why they've just been slaughtered. A 16-7 for Sprout. We go into this match as the number 19 and number 20 in the world facing off against each other, while they couldn't have looked further apart. Sprout utterly dominant from start to finish, losing both pistols and only losing 7 rounds overall. A very impressive performance from them, and Vince, we need a complete turnaround from Godsent if they're going to have any hope of surviving in this tournament.
This has to be a complete 180. We need to have like the Al Pacino speech, like a Denzel speech or something from one of those inspirational movies. Because simply put, if they play like that again, this will be over real fast. But we'll break that down, or the desk will try their best to break that down after this short break, guys.